The lobby of Aurelian Crest Tower in Chicago shone like a polished promise that Monday morning. Light poured through 40-foot windows, glanced off white marble, and spread across the brushed steel of the elevators. An LED panel above the reception desk cycled through 3 words in calm white letters. Respect. Leadership. Integrity. The building had been designed to look like a place where those words meant something, and most days, no one bothered to ask whether they did. Nicole Harrington walked through the revolving door at exactly 7:45. She was 28 years old, the youngest chief executive in the company's history, and in 30 minutes, the board on the 48th floor would vote to make her the North America executive president. Her dress was black, tailored, with a soft V at the collar. Her hair was the color of dark walnut, brushed straight past her shoulders. 2 assistants followed at a respectful distance, one carrying her tablet, one carrying her coffee. A small internal communications team trailed behind, ready to capture what they had already begun calling, in private memos, the historic day. She did not see the janitor at first. She saw the elevator. The private one, to the right of the bank of public lifts, the one reserved for the board. She had walked toward that elevator every morning for 3 years, and every morning the path had been clear. This morning, it was not. A young assistant from the marketing floor had rushed across the lobby a minute earlier, late and overcaffeinated, and the cup had slipped from his hand. The spill was small, no larger than a dinner plate, but it had bloomed across the polished marble like an ink blot. Patrick Caldwell had reached it before anyone else. He was a tall man in a charcoal janitor's uniform, with broad shoulders, dark brown hair cut short, and the kind of quiet face that did not draw attention until you needed something. He had set a yellow warning sign in the path of the VIP elevator, pulled a mop bucket near, and crouched to clean. Nicole's heels clicked toward him. She did not slow down. She did not pause to read the sign. She stepped around it, and her left heel caught the wet edge of the marble. For half a second, the polished floor decided whether to send her down. One of her assistants caught her elbow just in time. The internal communications photographer flinched but did not lower his camera. Patrick straightened. He spoke softly. "The floor is slick, ma'am. It just needs a minute." She turned to him as if she had only just noticed he existed. Her face was beautiful and very cold. "Excuse me? It just needs a minute," he repeated. "I am sorry for the inconvenience." Around them, the lobby went quiet in that subtle way crowded rooms do when they sense something is about to go wrong. The receptionist, Claire Bennett, looked up from her monitor. A security guard near the door, Eric Mason, shifted his weight. An intern named Leah Foster, who had been waiting for her badge to be reactivated, lifted her head slowly. None of them moved closer. None of them looked away. Patrick was 29. He had not woken up that morning expecting to argue with the chief executive of Aurelian Crest in front of half a lobby. He had woken up at 5, made breakfast for his daughter, braided her hair badly the way he always did, and dropped her off at the elementary school 6 blocks from his apartment. He had then taken the train to the tower, changed into the gray uniform in a basement locker, and started his shift the way he had started every shift for the past 2 months. What no one in the lobby knew was that the uniform did not belong to him. The job did not either. Patrick Caldwell was the legal representative of the Caldwell Legacy Trust, the family holding that owned one of the largest single voting blocks in Aurelian Crest. His father, William Caldwell, had been one of the company's 3 founders. William had been pushed out of the spotlight years earlier in a quiet boardroom dispute, and he had refused to fight it in the press. Instead, he had kept his shares, his vote, and one piece of advice he had given his son on more than one evening at the kitchen table. If you want to know what a company really is, do not listen to the speech the leader gives. Ask the person who empties the trash at midnight. After William died, Patrick became the trust's representative. He had the right to sit at the table when the board decided who to promote, who to retain, and who to remove. 2 months earlier, with the board's quiet approval, he had taken a different seat. He had asked to spend 60 days inside the tower in its lowest roles. A morning shift as a janitor. An afternoon shift in the warehouse. A few late nights helping the third shift technicians replace bulbs and clean filters. He wanted to see how the people at the top treated the people they assumed could not hurt them. He had heard the rumors before he started. A security guard yelled at for opening a door too slowly. A receptionist publicly corrected for mispronouncing the name of a visiting investor. A maintenance worker reassigned to a worse shift after asking for a single afternoon off. An intern asked to redo a slide deck at 1 in the morning, then left out of the credits. Every rumor traced back, in some way, to the same office. The office of Nicole Harrington. Patrick had not come to the conclusion easily. He did not believe in punishing people for one bad day. He had spent the first month listening more than watching. He had eaten in the staff break room. He had taken coffee orders for the front desk on busy mornings without complaint. He had let people forget he was there. He had wanted, in some small private way, to be wrong about what he had heard. He was not wrong. But he was not in a hurry to act either. He was waiting for the kind of moment that would make the truth visible to everyone in the room at the same time. He had not expected that moment to arrive with his daughter standing in it. Nicole had not become chief executive by being kind. She had not become chief executive by being cruel either. She had become chief executive by being right about numbers when other people were wrong. 3 years earlier, when Aurelian Crest had been bleeding cash and the previous executive had retired without a successor, Nicole had presented a restructuring plan that closed 2 unprofitable divisions, renegotiated 4 major leases, and stabilized the stock price within 11 months. The board had been afraid of her, and grateful, in roughly equal measure. She was very good at her job, which was part of the problem. People who are very good at one thing often begin to believe that the rules they apply in that one thing apply everywhere else. Nicole's rule was simple. Results matter, and the people who produce them matter, and everyone else is overhead. She did not think this was cruel. She thought it was honest. She believed the world would be a better place if more leaders said it out loud. She said versions of it often, though always in the right rooms. The company does not pay for feelings. If they want to be respected, they should climb to a position that earns respect. Discipline is the only kindness a serious organization can afford. She said these things to investors, to board members, to the friendly press writers who liked her photographs. Behind that audience in the corridors where the receptionists and the maintenance workers and the night technicians lived, the same sentences arrived in a different form. As a tone. As a turned shoulder. As a memo that quietly changed someone's schedule. The speech she planned to give that morning, the one already loaded on her tablet, was titled, in her own neat font, A Culture of Seeing. It contained sentences she had written and rewritten over a weekend. Aurelian Crest will become the place where every human being is seen. Real leadership is not climbing higher. It is lifting others as you climb. Sustainable growth begins with a culture of respect. She had practiced the cadence in front of her bathroom mirror twice. She had even teared up once at the part about her late father, who had nothing to do with the company. She had not, as far as anyone in the building could remember, ever asked the receptionist's name. So when she stepped around the warning sign that morning, and her heel caught the wet marble, she did not feel embarrassment. She felt insulted. The slip had been small. The audience had been small. But Nicole Harrington had a rule about small humiliations. They could not be allowed to grow. So she turned to Patrick, and she chose to be the kind of leader her speech had warned everyone she would never be. This is exactly the kind of carelessness, she said loud enough for the lobby to hear, that drags down a building like this. A warning sign in the path of the executive elevator. A puddle in the middle of the lobby on a board day. Whoever placed you here clearly did not consider what professionalism looks like. Patrick set the mop against the bucket. He did not raise his voice. The sign is there so no one gets hurt. The spill happened less than 2 minutes ago. And yet here we are. Here we are. 2 of her assistants looked at the floor. One pretended to tap through her calendar. Leah Foster slid her phone slightly out of her bag. She did not record yet. She only watched. Nicole took a slow step closer to Patrick. Her heels marked a sharp rhythm on the marble. She looked up at him because he was tall, and that small inconvenience seemed to annoy her further. "What is your name?" "Patrick." "Patrick what?" "Patrick Caldwell." She paused on the surname for half a second, then dismissed it. There were Caldwells in every phone book in the country. She made a small note on her tablet, or pretended to, and turned to her senior assistant. Make sure facilities knows we want this contractor reviewed. I do not want to see him in this lobby again. The assistant nodded without looking at Patrick. Patrick did not look at the assistant. He looked at the revolving door behind Nicole, because his daughter had just walked through it. Stella Caldwell was 6 years old. She wore a pale blue cardigan over a clean white shirt, beige pants that had a small grass stain near the right knee from the playground, and small canvas shoes that were beginning to wear at the heel. Her dark brown hair was pulled to one side with a cream-colored ribbon her father had tied that morning, slightly crooked. She held a stuffed rabbit against her chest. The rabbit's left ear had been resewn with thread that did not quite match. The rabbit had belonged to her mother. The school, 3 blocks away, had lost power that morning. The principal had called the parents whose contact numbers were on file. Patrick had told the school office that Stella could be brought to the lobby of the tower. He had planned to meet her at the reception desk between cleaning shifts. He had not planned for her to see what she was now seeing. Nicole turned to follow Patrick's eyes. She looked at Stella the way some adults look at a child they have decided is part of the inconvenience, not part of the room. And whose child is this? Mine, Patrick said. In the executive lobby, her school lost power. She is waiting at the front desk. Nicole's mouth made a small shape that was almost a smile, and not quite. She looked back at Patrick. She lowered her voice just enough to feel like a private remark, and just loud enough for the lobby to keep listening. Then you of all people, she said, should understand what professionalism means. A daughter should see her father knowing his place. The word place did something to the room that words rarely do. It made several people who had been pretending not to listen lift their heads at the same time. Claire Bennett's hand stopped above her keyboard. Eric Mason exhaled through his nose. Leah Foster, very quietly, pressed a button on her phone inside her bag. Patrick did not turn to Stella right away. He held Nicole's gaze for 1 second longer than was comfortable for either of them. Then he crouched. He went down to one knee on the marble he had been cleaning, in the gray uniform that smelled faintly of citrus from the floor solution, and he opened one arm. Stella walked to him at the pace of a child who has sensed that something is wrong, but does not yet have the language for it. She stopped just outside his arm. She held the rabbit tighter against her chest. "Hi, Bunny," he said. That was what he called her some mornings. It was an old joke between them about the rabbit they had bought together a few months before her mother died. "Did Miss Patterson bring you?" She nodded. "Are you okay?" She nodded again, but slower this time. She looked up over his shoulder at Nicole. Then she looked back at her father. "Daddy," she said very quietly, "did you do something wrong?" It was the question that made the lobby fall the rest of the way silent. There is a particular silence that adults can produce when they realize, all at once, that they are witnessing the exact moment a child learns what cruelty looks like in the world. The lobby produced that silence now. Patrick did not look at Nicole. He looked at his daughter. He reached out and gently straightened her crooked ribbon, then the collar of her cardigan, the way he had done 100 mornings before. "No, sweetheart," he said. "I'm just keeping people from falling down." Stella thought about this. She looked at the yellow sign. She looked at the wet patch of marble. She looked at Nicole's heels. Whatever she concluded, she did not say. She moved one step closer to her father and leaned her shoulder against his. Patrick stood up slowly, lifting Stella's hand into his. He did not look angry. He looked, if anything, tired in a way that had nothing to do with the morning. He looked like a man who had been hoping for 2 months that he would not have to do what he was about to do. He turned to Nicole. He did not raise his voice. He spoke at exactly the volume necessary for the lobby to hear without anyone needing to lean forward. "Ma'am," he said, "I have cleaned this floor for 2 months. I have cleaned floors longer than that. There is nothing about this work that makes my daughter ashamed of me. The only thing that could do that is if she watched me stand here in silence while you spoke that way in front of her. So I will not be silent. With respect." Nicole laughed once. It was a short, sharp sound that did not match her face. Her assistants did not laugh with her. That, more than anything, was the first sign that the room had already begun to turn. "Respect," she said. "That is a strong word for a man holding a mop." "It is the same word in every hand," he replied. "Mops do not change it. Suits do not change it. The people who clean this floor make it possible for you to walk across it without falling. The people who guard the door make it possible for you to feel safe enough to be unkind to them. The people at the front desk learn the names of guests you have not bothered to learn. If they all left tomorrow, this building would not open by lunchtime." He did not say this like a lecture. He said it like a tired man explaining something simple to someone he had hoped would already know. Nicole's smile thinned. "And who, exactly, do you think you are, to lecture me about how a building runs?" Patrick looked down at Stella, then back at Nicole. "I am a father," he said, trying to teach a 6-year-old that dignity is not on a name badge. "There are sentences that travel through a room and change the air pressure. That was one of them." Claire Bennett at the reception desk pressed her lips together to keep her face still. Eric Mason, the guard, drew himself up a 1/4 inch straighter. Leah Foster's eyes moved to the elevator, then to Nicole, then to Patrick, then back to her phone. The internal communications photographer lowered his camera for the first time that morning. He understood perhaps that no photograph he could take would help his employer now. Nicole, however, could not yet see what the rest of them saw. The lobby had not yet moved away from her. She still believed it belonged to her. So she did the thing she always did when small humiliations threatened to grow. She tried to crush them under a larger one. She gestured to Eric Mason. "Please escort this contractor out of the lobby. He is no longer welcome on the premises. I will be calling his agency this morning." Eric did not move. He looked at Patrick. He looked at Nicole. He looked back at Patrick. "Officer Mason," Nicole said with a sharpness that made his name sound like a warning. Eric cleared his throat. "Ma'am, the gentleman has not done anything that requires removal." The warning sign was properly placed. The spill was responded to within company protocol. "With respect, ma'am." "With respect," Nicole repeated, as if the phrase were a small insect that had landed on her sleeve. She turned back to Patrick. "Then I will speak to your supervisor, and his supervisor, and the agency. And by lunchtime, I will see to it that you do not work in any Aurelian Crest property in this country. Are we clear, Mr. Caldwell?" Patrick looked at her for a long moment. "Are you sure," he said very quietly, "that you want to do this before the vote?" Nicole laughed again. This time the laugh was higher, less steady. "The vote," she said. "Now the man with the mop wants to talk about the vote. Make a note of that, please. The janitor thinks he is a shareholder." She turned to the lobby as if to invite agreement. No one met her eyes. Not even her own assistants. Patrick took his phone from his pocket. He did not lift it dramatically. He did not announce what he was about to do. He simply pressed a save number and held the device to his ear, the way a man might call to confirm a lunch reservation. "This is Patrick," he said. "Bring the vote downstairs. The answer is in the lobby." He ended the call. He returned the phone to his pocket. He looked down at Stella, who had been watching him with the very serious attention that 6-year-olds reserve for moments they cannot yet explain. Nicole shook her head slowly. "I am sorry," she said. "Did you just call the board of directors? From a mop bucket?" He did not answer. He adjusted Stella's ribbon. He did not need to. It had been straight for 2 minutes. Nicole turned to her assistants. "Get the recording. I want every word of this captured. The contractor has just impersonated a member of the executive structure. That is a security matter. That is grounds for immediate termination." The assistant with the tablet hesitated. She had been with Nicole for 2 years. She had seen the chief executive in 1,000 small power plays. She had not, until that moment, ever seen her chief executive look nervous. There was a quality in Patrick's stillness that was beginning to alarm her, although she could not yet name why. The chime above the VIP elevator began to sound. It chimed once. The light above the doors went amber. The mechanical murmur of the descending car filled the suddenly attentive silence. Nicole had been about to say something else. The words were already in her throat. They did not arrive. Her eyes moved to the elevator. Her assistant's eyes moved to the elevator. Claire Bennett, at the reception desk, slowly lowered her hands into her lap. Eric Mason straightened his shoulders. The elevator chimed a second time. The light above the doors changed from amber to white. The car had arrived. It was 8:07 in the morning. The vote was scheduled for 8:15. The board did not usually leave the 48th floor before noon on a vote day. The board was not today on the 48th floor. The doors slid open. The first person to step out was not a security officer. It was not a personal assistant. It was Henry Blackwood, 62 years old, chairman of the board of Aurelian Crest, his silver hair brushed straight back, and his charcoal suit cut as cleanly as the lobby itself. He did not look at Nicole first. He walked directly past her. He walked the length of the marble between the elevator and the warning sign. He stopped in front of Patrick. He inclined his head just slightly, the way an older man does when offering a younger one something he believes is owed. Mr. Caldwell, Henry said, I am sorry that you had to witness this on your final morning of the assessment. On behalf of the board, please accept our apologies. The lobby did not breathe. Nicole's face went through several expressions in 3 seconds. The first was confusion, as if she had not heard him correctly. The second was a kind of swift internal calculation, the look of a person rapidly trying to fit new information into the shape of an old plan. The third was the beginning of fear. Henry, she said. He raised one hand, palm down, in a small motion that was not unkind, but did not invite interruption. A woman stepped out of the elevator behind him. She was in her mid-40s, dark blonde hair tied back, in a navy blue suit with a small silver pin at the collar. This was Allison Grant, senior legal counsel to the board. Behind her came Robert Ellison, head of internal audit, 51 years old, with reading glasses still hanging from a cord around his neck. Behind him came 2 independent directors, both older, both quiet, both holding folders. Allison stepped forward. She spoke clearly and without hurry, in the voice of a lawyer who has been preparing this sentence for weeks. For the record, she said, Mr. Patrick Caldwell has been completing a 60-day cultural assessment authorized by the Board of Directors of Aurelian Crest. Mr. Caldwell is the legal representative of the Caldwell Legacy Trust. The trust holds a voting block material to today's executive promotion. Mr. Caldwell's assessment was scheduled to conclude at noon today, and his findings were to be presented prior to the board vote on the appointment of Ms. Harrington as North America Executive President. Given what has occurred in this lobby in the last 15 minutes, the board has elected to receive his findings here. Nicole opened her mouth. She closed it. She opened it again. This is not, she said, an appropriate setting for a board matter. It is the setting where the matter occurred, Allison said. Patrick had not moved during any of this. He had simply lowered his eyes once, briefly, to look at Stella, who had begun to lean against his leg. He had then looked at Henry Blackwood and given a single small nod. Henry turned now toward Nicole. He did not raise his voice. He had never been the kind of chairman who needed to. Nicole, he said, there will be a conversation. It will not be the one you prepared on your tablet this morning. Nicole's mouth worked. The historic day photographer had quietly lowered his camera all the way to his side. I did not know who he was, Nicole said. Patrick spoke then, for the first time in several minutes. He did not look at the chairman. He looked at Nicole. He spoke without anger. That, he said quietly, is the problem. You only think my dignity matters when you know who I am. The line did not echo. The marble did not catch it. But everyone in the lobby heard it land. Robert Ellison opened the folder he had carried from the elevator. He cleared his throat. He had been the company's head of internal audit for 11 years. He had read more uncomfortable reports than most people in the building, and he had learned to deliver them in the same calm voice he used at his grandson's piano recitals. Over the past 60 days, he said, Mr. Caldwell has logged 37 incidents at this property involving employees in roles classified as administrative, custodial, security, reception, or entry-level operations. Of those 37 incidents, 12 trace directly to the office of the chief executive. They include the unilateral reassignment of 3 custodial staff to less favorable shifts after complaints were raised, the suppression of 2 formal grievance emails from the reception team, a directive to facilities to ensure that night maintenance crews remain, and I am quoting the email, sufficiently invisible during executive hours, and a documented pattern of public reprimands of front desk personnel, in the presence of guests. He turned a page. In addition, he said, the board has reviewed lobby surveillance footage of the events of this morning. The footage confirms that the warning sign was placed correctly. The footage confirms that Mr. Caldwell informed Ms. Harrington of the slick condition before she crossed the area. The footage further confirms the content of the remarks made in the presence of Mr. Caldwell's daughter. He looked up briefly. He did not look at Nicole. He looked at the marble. I will not repeat those remarks in this lobby. Allison Grant stepped in. The board has reviewed Mr. Caldwell's preliminary findings, the surveillance record, and the audit log. The vote on Ms. Harrington's promotion to North America Executive President is effective immediately, postponed indefinitely. Ms. Harrington will step away from all direct personnel decisions pending an independent review. All employee complaints filed against the Chief Executive's office in the last 6 months will be reopened. Independent interviewers will speak with custodial, security, reception, warehouse, and intern staff at this property. All disciplinary actions issued under the Chief Executive's office in the last 6 months will be examined for indication of retaliation. She closed the folder. The board thanks you, she said, for your patience. Nicole stood very still. The lobby that had once been the stage of her promotion had become something else. It had become the room where, in front of an intern, a receptionist, a security guard, 2 assistants, and a 6-year-old child, the chief executive of Aurelian Crest had been told, in measured language, exactly what kind of leader she had chosen to be. She tried to speak. The words she found were small. I did not mean to hurt his daughter. Patrick did not move. He did not raise his voice. He simply spoke the only sentence that, in that moment, could be true. But you did, he said. And you only realized it when you learned I had power. He looked at Henry Blackwood. He looked at Robert Ellison. He looked back, finally, at Nicole. That is not a misunderstanding. That is a pattern. The lobby did not erupt. There was no cheering. There was no scattered applause. The people who had been in that room for the entire morning understood, in a way that takes years to learn, that nothing about the moment deserved celebration. A career was being interrupted in front of them. A child was watching. The most appropriate response to such a moment was the response Patrick had given. Stillness. Nicole looked, briefly, like a person trying to remember the shape of a room she had walked through 1,000 times. She turned toward her assistants. They did not meet her eyes. She turned toward her communications team. The head of communications had already lowered her gaze to her phone, where she was, with the discipline of long practice, drafting a holding statement. Henry Blackwood gestured quietly to one of the independent directors. The director stepped forward and spoke gently. Ms. Harrington, the board has reserved a small conference room on the 2nd floor. Council will join you. We will need a brief conversation now. Nicole nodded. She did not argue. The fight had gone out of her face, replaced by something quieter and, for the first time that morning, perhaps honest. She walked in heels that were now too loud on the marble, toward the public elevator. She did not look back at Patrick. She did not look at the warning sign. She did not look at Stella, although she paused briefly, at the edge of the lobby, as if she had wanted to and could not. The doors closed behind her. Patrick exhaled, just once. He looked down at Stella. Stella looked up at him. The serious 6-year-old expression had not entirely left her face. Daddy, she said. Is she bad? Patrick crouched. He held her small hand in both of his. He thought about the question with the seriousness it deserved. No one is just one thing, sweetheart, he said. She is good at some things. She is brave about some things. But today, she chose to be unkind to someone she thought could not answer back. That is not a small thing. And when the people who can answer back stay quiet, the people who cannot get used to being treated that way. That is why I had to speak. Stella thought about it. She nodded once. Did she know you could answer back? No, baby. She didn't. Is that why she was mean? Patrick did not answer for a few seconds. The lobby waited with him. That, he said finally, is the part that matters. Henry Blackwood, who had been standing at a respectful distance, stepped forward only when he was sure he was not interrupting. Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Ellison will need a few more minutes of your time upstairs. Take whatever time you need first. The day is yours. Patrick stood. He shook Henry's hand. He shook Allison's hand. He shook Robert's hand. He picked up his mop. He carried it to the supply closet near the loading dock, set it carefully in its place, and washed his hands at the small steel sink the way he had washed them every morning for 2 months. Then he came back, took Stella's hand, and walked with her to the front desk, where Claire Bennett quietly asked Stella if she would like a glass of water, and Stella, after thinking about it, said yes, please. The next several weeks were quieter than the morning had been, and in some ways more important. Aurelian Crest announced a restructuring of its internal complaints process. Custodial, security, reception, and warehouse staff were given a direct line to a board ombudsman that did not pass through the office of the chief executive. The contract with the cleaning vendor was renegotiated to include explicit protections against retaliatory reassignment. A small fund was established in the name of a longtime employee, a woman from the front desk who had been quietly pushed out 2 years earlier and whose grievance had been, in the audit, the third item on a long list. Nicole Harrington did not lose her position that week. The board did not believe in symbolic firings carried out in the heat of a public moment. It believed in process. She lost her promotion. She lost her direct personnel authority. She was required to participate, with 2 outside advisors, in a structured leadership review that included sessions with the people her office had treated as overhead. In one of those sessions, in a small conference room on the 2nd floor, she sat across from a former receptionist who had been reassigned without explanation 18 months earlier. The former receptionist was kind. Nicole found that harder to bear than the alternative. Whether she would, in time, become a different kind of leader was a question the building was not yet ready to answer. The honest people inside it agreed only on this. She had been given the opportunity to try, which was more than she had given to several people on her own floor. A few weeks after the morning in the lobby, Patrick Caldwell returned to Aurelian Crest in a navy suit. He did not walk to the VIP elevator first. He stopped at the front desk, where Claire Bennett looked up and smiled at him in the small, private way of people who have witnessed something together and not needed to talk about it. He nodded to Eric Mason at the door. He walked across the marble toward the central elevators, the public ones. Near the bank of elevators, an older janitor in the same gray uniform was bending to straighten a yellow warning sign that had been knocked askew by a luggage cart. Patrick set his briefcase down. He bent and helped straighten the sign. He took the moment to introduce himself by his first name. The older janitor's name was Frank. They shook hands. Stella was with him that morning. She held the rabbit. She watched her father do this small thing the way he had done a similar small thing on a morning that had changed several lives. In the elevator, on the way up, she asked him a question she had been holding for several days. "Daddy," she said, "if she had known who you were that first morning, would she have been kind?" Patrick thought about the question. He thought about it the way he thought about all of her questions, which was as if she had earned an honest answer. "Maybe, sweetheart," he said. "But kindness given because someone is afraid of your power is not kindness. It is just fear wearing nice clothes." Stella considered this. She slipped her small hand into his. The elevator rose, quietly, toward a floor where, that morning, a different kind of meeting was about to begin. A title on a door could make people stand when a person walked into a room. Only character could make them respect that person when the same person walked back out of it. And in every lobby in every city, in every hour of every working day, There was someone bending to clean a floor, not so that others would notice them, so that others would not fall. The wise learned to read that posture correctly. The unwise learned, sometimes too late, that the person they had been dismissing was the one who had already seen, from the lowest point in the room, exactly who they were.